Good day, everyone. Welcome to ITS 208 and CSC 209. This is Graphics and Visual Computing. My name is Julius, your instructor. Today, we're going to have another pre recorded class. This is in continuation to our discussion about Adobe Photoshop. So be sure to watch the entire video, listen, and understand the lessons attentively. Right after this class, I will be posting an assignment and assessment later on. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. And by the way, if you have any questions or clarifications regarding today's lesson, please go ahead and comment your question down to our Facebook group post, or you can send in your questions through our respective Facebook chat groups. Okay. All right. So again, for today's lesson, we will be talking about, or we're going to understand Photoshop layers. So if you can remember last time, we've discussed about the, or basically we've discussed about getting started with Adobe Photoshop. We've talked about the essentials, Adobe Photoshop essentials that includes the workspace, the Photoshop tools that we'll be using for graphic designing, and then palettes. So for today, we're going to focus on one of those palettes, and that's going to be the layers. Okay, so we'll talk more about layers in just a moment, but before anything else, we'll be talking about the things that we are supposed to learn with Adobe Photoshop. Now, Adobe Photoshop is, like I said, learning mastering Adobe Photoshop will take a lot of time. Okay, it may take for some it may take for years to master Adobe Photoshop. Some may take um now depending on the capability of an individual or a graphic designer. However, for this course, we are going to focus on the three things that I believe graphic designer or every graphic designer tends to learn first before they master the actual Adobe Photoshop. Okay, and that includes mastering the layers, mastering the pen tools, and mastering layer masks. Okay, all right. So again, layers. That's what we're going to talk about today. And then the pen tool is basically it's one of the most powerful tool in Adobe Photoshop. That the pen tool is basically capable of just about anything. You can either use it for tracing, for doing illustrations, and you can also use it for masking, okay, and so on and so forth. Anyway, we'll talk more about it once we've already mastered the layers. And then mask, basically that is a process of removing backgrounds, diba? So that is masking is one of the techniques used by graphic designers to remove backgrounds of some subjects, right? For example, if you have a photograph of yourself and you decided to remove the background, masking is um, the term. And again, all of these three would be the things that we are going to master, right, in this course. And then you can learn more about Adobe Photoshop if you decided, if you're interested in doing it on your own. Okay? All right. So this is going to be the fourth lesson for Adobe Photoshop, understanding layers. Layers is very important. Understanding layers is very important in making compositions. Doing properly makes editing much easier. Layers let you organize your work into distinct levels that can be edited and viewed as individual objects. Every Photoshop CC document contains at least one layer. Creating multiple layers lets you easily control how your composition is printed, displayed, and edited. You will use the layers palette often when creating a document, so it is crucial to understand what it does and how to use it. Okay, so again, layers is one of the most important thing that every graphic designer should master when doing graphic design using Adobe Photoshop. Basically, all the visual elements that you are going to put inside your or include in your composition must be must be let's say must be put or must be contained to a layer. Okay, so let's say for example, if you're going to create a poster that has multiple images, it's better that those images must have its own layer. Okay? So think of it as layers, mura siya og artboards na transparent. So let's say for example, if you're going to kuan magama ta og maybe some of you have already experienced it back in your senior years or maybe junior years, if you have projects in school that will perhaps test your creativity, di ba? Especially sa mga art classes. So if we're going to create, for example, a photo album, okay? So if you're going to design a photo album, then for example, you're going to add flowers to it, then you have to cut out the flowers, right? And then you're going to put that into the artboard. So the flower that you cut out is already considered as a layer, okay? And then the more things that you're or the more decorations that you're going to add to your artboard, then maybe it gets prettier, and those objects that you added to your artboard is considered as the layer if you're going to relate that to Adobe Photoshop. All right. So again, every visual elements that we'll be adding to our Adobe Photoshop or to our composition rather must be as much as possible must be included to different layers. And that way, it gives us versatility on editing each objects or each layers, and basically we'll be able to organize it much easier. Okay. So anyway, this is what a layer or the palette looks like. So as you can see, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 main, let's say, parts. Again, we'll talk each of them so for us to be able to understand it, Adobe Photoshop much easier. Okay, so just to make sure, let's open up Adobe Photoshop and let's see an actual layer in action. Okay, so let's create new, or let me just open up any other PSD files that I've already created. So let's say, for example, this one. Okay, so this is a default, or this is my preferred workspace for Adobe Photoshop, and layers are right here. So let me decrease it real quick. Okay, here. So these are my palettes. So let me move it aside so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so as you can see, there are several dozens of palettes that I've created that I've created in this particular design, and let's take a look at each one of them. So so for example, right now I have selected the June 4 2021 text layer. So whenever I selected the layer that I wanted to modify, then the every changes will only be applied to that particular layer. So for example, if I wanted to move this text, if I wanted to move this text around, then all I need to do is select the layer which this text belong, and that is right here, and then use the move tool and then move it around. So notice that even if I click it in this area, the coastal word will not move, only the June 4, because June 4 is what I've selected on the layer. Okay, so basically this is the layer palette, and this is very important when learning Adobe Photoshop. So notice how each or the individual objects that I've created is contained to different or has a layer on its own. So in that way, it would be much easier for me to manage them or perhaps modify them and organize them. Okay, so let's take a look at the parts of the layer. So we have letter A. Okay, A, layer visibility. The eye shows the layer selected, or the eye shows that the layer selected is visible. Click the eye to set the layer visible or hidden. So where is it getting eye? Data. Now I'm not real sure if you can see it if you're using mobile phone, but if you're using Adobe Photoshop, you'll see that there is an eye icon, mata, and then if pag makita ang mata, then the layer is visible. That means it will appear to your artboard. However, if the eye is invisible, then the entire layer is also invisible. So let's say, for example, Now, we were talking about the June 4, 2021. Now, if I decided to hide it for some reason, if I decided to hide this, then I'm just going to click the eye icon kanina. So right now, since the eye icon is visible, that means the layer is also visible. But if I'm going to hide this, I'm just going to click the eye and the eye disappear, and that also makes the text disappear or the layer disappear. So let me another example. If I decided to here, if I decided to hide some the College of Criminal Justice Education. So if I decided to hide this, I'm just going to click this and it will go away. All right. And then clicking back again will make the element or the layer visible again. Okay. So that is the layer visibility. Letter B, this one. Layer locking option. This allows you to keep the layer from moving around the canvas or the artboard. The checkered button allows you to lock the transparent pixels. The brush icon allows you to lock image pixels. The arrow icon allows you to lock position. And the lock icon allows you to lock all options. Once the layer is locked, some options and function may be disabled. Okay, so basically, the locking option will allow you to lock. Just in case if you don't want any changes to that particular layer, then all you need to do is lock it. So depending on the type of layer that you selected, several things will lit up. So let's see. So for example, if we click the text layer, kanina ay letter T, that means it's a text. That means you can edit it. You can modify the text. Now, the only thing that's lit up is the lock position and then prevent auto nesting into and out of artboards and then lock the entire thing. If I'm going to select an actual layer, then it will lit up everything. So again, these are just options that will allow you to lock several um, layers according to your preference. So again, we have here locking the pixels or transparent pixels, locking the image pixels, locking position, and then prevent auto nesting into and out of the artboard frame, and then locking the entire thing. So personally, I don't really worry about everything else because I haven't really experienced any scenario that I will be needing this other four. Just in case if I need a layer to be locked, then I'm just going to click the entire thing or lock the entire thing. Okay, so for example, if I'm going to lock the June 4, 2021, just click it right here, and you won't be able to move the June 4, 2021 around. And it will if you attempt, it will say could not use the move tool because the layer is locked. All right. If I decided to edit it, so to edit it, I'm just gonna click the text, and then if I try to edit it, I won't be able to edit it as well since it is locked. So if there are any if just in case you will be needing the layer or some layers to be locked or to be not to be edited, not to be modified, then you have to select lock. Okay, so to unlock it, once you've locked it, notice that there will be a lock icon at the right side, and then to unlock it, all the same thing that you were going to do, you just have to click this again. Okay, all right. Next, we have letter C. That is okay. Layer blending mode defines how the layer's pixel blend with the other layers in the image. By choosing a particular blending mode from the drop-down menu, you can create variety of special effects. Sometimes I use it for adding some kind of filter to the layer, all right, or special effects. In other words, okay. So let's say for example, now again, this is what we are talking about, the blending option. Yeah, the layer blending mode rather. So right now everything is normal. So let's try to look for a particular design or layer that we want to change the blending mode, and let's see how it reacts to the entire thing. So let's say for example, kanisha, kane. All right, we'll try to change its blending mode, and then let's see how it. works basically. Okay, so right now it's in normal, meaning there's nothing to it. Everything is normal. Everything is according to what it's supposed to. However, if you're going to click that, you'll be given with drop downs with different blending modes. So the first one that you'll see is dissolve, and let's see how it changes to how it affects to the layer. So if I'm going to click that. All right, so far you won't notice it clearly, but if you're going to zoom it in, you'll see that something has happened to the edges. Let's try to zoom it a little more. Not sure if you can see it on your screen, but right now, kuan siya, you will see that yeah, it's mura siya grainy. Okay, so let's try to change that another one. So about darken. Okay, all right. Okay, the darken will obviously darken the entire thing, or perhaps remove the white colors rather. So all their white colors will be removed, and the only thing that will remain are the colors, other colors. So notice that there are no more color whites on our layer. It's been considered as transparent. The white colors are transparent, and the rest are displayed. That is in darken. So we have multiply, okay, and then just basically, I don't have to explain everything because me myself some of the blending modes I don't really understand how they work. I just tried it and then see how it affects to my design. Diba? So we have multiply, we have color burn, and then we have linear burn, and then we have darker color, we have lighten, and then screen, color dodge, so on and so forth. So that is the blending mode. Okay, let's set it back to normal and then let's proceed. Then we have fill, sets the transparency of the color of the image or object to in the layer. Okay, so basically I'm going to explain the fill and opacity um, perhaps at the same time because they offer the same functionality. The opacity sets the transparency of the entire layer. The fill sets the transparency of the color of the image or object in the layer. Okay, so basically it just sets the transparency of the layer. So here it is, we have opacity and then layer. So to change the opacity, or meaning when say opacity, that is basically transparency, right? So you can either decrease the opacity or the transparency of the layer by clicking this and then slide it down. So if you're going to slide it to the not down but left, then if you're going to slide it to the left, then it gets more transparent, and then to the right, it's get less transparent. Okay, or you can type in the actual percentage of the transparency. Let's say, for example, I want it to be 50% transparent. Then here it is. Okay, that also basically it's going to be the same with the fill. So I'm going to slide it left and right. Basically it offers the same thing, so it be totally up to you. I guess there must be difference between these two, but the general idea is it just sets a transparency. Um, you can opt to either use opacity or fill if you're going to set the transparency of your layer. Right, next is we have layer lock. When the lock icon is showing, it means one of the layer locking option is turned on. Double click on the icon to turn it off or on. So this is what we were talking about a while ago, this particular icon. So if the layer is locked, for example, if we're going to lock it all, then the lock icon will display regardless of which locking option you selected. So for example, if we're going to select this, it's still gonna be this, the lock icon are still gonna be displayed regardless of the locking option that you selected. So you can either turn it off by selecting the locking option again, or you can double click and hold on, cancel. All right, you can double click and then it goes away. All right, next is we have layer option menu, letter G. This one, this part, this area. Layer options menu. This provides a shortcut to the following options: new layer, duplicate layer, delete layer, layer properties, etc. Some of the options are also displayed at the bottom of the palette. So basically, it will give you more options regarding the layer. So if we're going to click that, we can either have new layer, copy CSS, copy SVG, duplicate layer, delete layer, so on and so forth. And some of these options are already located at the bottom of the layer, which is Kane. All right, and we'll talk more about it in just a few moments. And then add layer style. So letter H, that's one. FX. Okay, the FX icon, that means it's FX. So it means adding layer style. This allows you to add effects to the layer. We'll talk more about it in just a moment, because selecting the effects or adding layer style would be another thing to another a whole new discussion to talk about. So let's say, for example, if I decided, let's select another layer and put, how about, no, let's select another layer, the one that we haven't added yet, added any styles to it yet. Most of these layers have already have its own style. So let's, okay, all right, let's take a look at this particular layer, Kanisha. All right, okay, this one. Now we can we can add effects to it by selecting this, the FX, again, the layer style. So select that and then select whatever it is that you select, the specific style that you wanted to add. Or you can also do it by doing right click and then blending options. So we have here the options for layer style. So as for the layer style, we have bevel and emboss. Okay. So bevel and emboss um will add an illusion or a 3D illusion to our design. Again, we'll talk more about it in just a few moments. And we have stroke, basically adding outline to the object. We have inner shadow, that is adding shadow inside the object or the layer. Diba? And then we have inner glow, that is adding glow inside. And then satin, we have color overlay, basically replacing the color of the entire layer. Gradient overlay, replacing the color of the entire layer with a gradient. When say gradient, combination of multiple colors. Pattern overlay, replacing the color of the entire layer with a pattern or texture. And then outer glow, and then drop shadow. All right, so these are the effects that you can add to the layer using the add layer style option. So we'll talk more about this in just a few moments. Okay, and then next, add vector mask. Okay, once added to the layer, where it is, letter I, here. Okay, add vector mask option. Once added to the layer, it allows you to add transparent parts of the image using a brush. Painting it with color changes the transparency of the painted parts. The darker the color used, the more transparent it gets. The lighter the color, the less transparent. More details about brushes and how to use it will be discussed later in this course. So basically, it will be discussed in our future lessons. Okay, example. All right. So, all right, let's have an example. So this is an example of, I'm sorry, this is an actual um, adjustment tool, and we'll discuss that in our future lesson. But to, hold on, okay, to demonstrate how vector mask works, so let's select any layers that we want to add a vector mask. So for example, this one. Okay, to add a vector mask, we're going to click this. All right, again, select the layer where you wanted to add a vector mask, and then select the add vector mask icon. So if we're going to select that, you'll notice that there is another, um, perhaps an object that will be added at the right side of the layer. So this is the mask thumbnail. So again, by definition, if we're going to paint the mask with color, okay, again, painting it with color changes the transparency of the painted parts. The darker the color used, the more transparent it gets. The lighter the color, the less transparent. All right. So again, we'll talk more about this, but this is just to demonstrate you guys how it works. So again, going back, it says there that if we're going to paint it with colors, the transparency will change. So for example, we are going to paint it with black or white, okay, and then completely black. So basically, that is the darkest color in Adobe Photoshop. So if we're going to paint it black, then the transparency gets 0. That means it will be completely transparent. Now, painting it with white will change the transparency to normal. So for example, let's try to paint it with, again, paint it with black. So to select black, we're going to click, hold on. Okay, we're going to select black, click the foreground panel, and then select black. The black would be just, again, to select black, all you need to do is to drag this circle at the bottom. Okay, and then select OK. Now our palette color, the color palette will be, or the foreground color in our palette will be color black. So again, if we're going to paint, the layer down, then it should be transparent. So let's increase the brush size a little bit bigger. You can either use the bracket key on your screen, or I'm sorry, on your keyboard, or you can do right click and then select the size, this one. Okay, all right, so let's try. So we'll try again. We are going to select the vector mask thumbnail, okay? Not this, but this. Make sure it's highlighted, and then paint the parts that you want it to be transparent. So let's say, for example, kane. All right, so see, since we paint it with black, everything is or those painted areas became transparent. So how about let's try to change it to, let's say, gray. Let's try to compare. Okay, see? All right. So we only are basically changing the color to, let's say, gray. So that means it's only about 50% transparent if we're going to paint it, paint the layer basically, right? And then painting it with white sets the transparency back to 100%. So let's try to take a look. So katong atong mga area nga atong gipintalan ganiha o black, let's try to paint it with white and let's see what happens. Okay, so everything gets back to normal. So that is vector mask. So basically, it is one of the techniques used by graphic designers to remove background images in an app, or perhaps separating an actual or a subject from its background, or a foreground from its background. Masking, again, from the very sa pinakauna natong againa, we talked about the three things that we're going to master in Adobe Photoshop. One of them is masking. Okay, so again, this is one of the techniques used for removing backgrounds and such. All right, so we're just going to remove that, right click, and then delete layer mask. Okay, let's proceed. We have create new fill or adjustment layer. Provides image and color adjustments such as brightness, color filter, contrast, etc. Once added, the adjustment will affect only to the layers below it. So that is letter J, this one. So adjustment layers. Basically, it will also give us more, diba? If gaina, we were talking, if this particular icon will allow us to add layer style. The adjustment layer will allow us to perhaps add more, or a much detailed and a broader way of adding effects to our, or managing or adding effects or modifying our layer. So let's say, for example, okay, all right, let's select, okay, let's just select the same layer because this is one of the layers that has multiple images to it. So again, if we're going to select this, you'll be given um, options. How are you going to add, or basically the type of effect that you're going to add to the layer? So we have here solid color, gradient, pattern, brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, so on and so forth. Again, We'll talk more about this perhaps in our next discussion, but just to give you an idea how it works. So let's say, for example, one of the most common thing that will be used, the adjustment layer will be used is this four. We have brightness, levels, curves, and exposure. So basically, it will give the layer a filter depending on which one you selected. So for example, if we're going to select brightness and contrast na lang para sa yung subtool. Now, we're going to add a brightness or contrast adjustment layer for this layer. So select this, all right? And then from this layer and below, diba, we'll be able to change its brightness and contrast. Again, it will only affect to the layers below this. It will not affect to the layers above, but only to the layers below. Okay? So, here, pag-click na to ana, ni-display ni siya. Oh, no, no, no. Okay. Alright, kana siya. And then, to change the brightness and contrast, all you need to do is to double-click. Asa na ron? Wala. Tada. Sorry. Okay. So, one. Alright, let's try again. Let's remove this. Let's delete this layer. Okay, again, we are going to add a brightness adjustment layer to this layer. So again, click this, and then you will see the properties right here. Okay, so to like you can now change the brightness and contrast with to the layer. So if we're going to increase the brightness, then all we need to do is we're going to slide it to the right. Can All right. Notice that it only affects the kaninga picture and the background because these are the only things that nga naapektahan ang kani. So the coastal cleanup is not affected because it is above the layer or the adjustment layer. So I also try to change the contrast. Na. Okay. So basically that is adjustment layer. Or basically you have the option to make to perhaps um okay, nga dapat mo effect ang brightness to all the layers below, or you can also select it to just go and take the effect only to this particular layer. To do so, we're just going to click that and then click this. So this adjust. Okay, so click this area right here. So again, it will say, hold on, it will say this adjustment affects all layers below. So excuse me. If we're going to click this, it won't only affect to this particular layer. So dili na mapektahan ang background ang any layers below. So let's say for example, okay, kana lang. So gaina na naapektahan siya tanan karon kanina lang nga layer. And you'll know that it's been added to it's been added to this layer only when you see this particular icon. Anyway, we'll talk more about it in our future lesson. This is just a demonstration on how adjustment layer works. And then we have create new group, allows you to group multiple layers for easy management. This is particularly helpful when doing a project with lots of layers, just like what I did. To group the layers, simply add new group, double click on the group name to rename, then drag the layers that you want to include to the group. Okay, so this is particularly important, especially if you're working on a project that contains lots of layers. So actually this project has lots of layers, so that's why I grouped it. So let's take a look what are the groups that I've used. So, kani. So everything is grouped. Kana. So that is to minimize the space that is used kuan para kay daghan na kaayong layers usahay maglibog na kog asa na dapita. So what I did, and I guess everybody should do it, is to group the layers according to its uses. So for example, so unsay nahimo na ako since I've grouped it. So basically, this design is for the entire NORSU Bais. So we all know that we have five colleges in the entire NORSU Bais. We have College of Arts and Sciences, Education, Business Administration. And we have CIT or Industrial Technology and CCJE or Criminal Justice Education. So right now, the CCJ is lit up. That means everything must be basically kanay siya tanan is grouped. This is a group of layers used for CCJE. If I'm going to select CIT, maupo na siya, and then CBA. All right, so it makes the designing process a little bit easier and manageable. So again, how to group layers. So for example, I want this kane. I want it to be grouped. So all I need to do is select this icon. So create new group, and then by default it will say group one. Double click to rename. For example, let's call it background. Okay, and then to add the layers, all you need to do is click the layers that I wanted to add to be grouped. If to add multiple or to select multiple layers, click and hold Shift and then click. Right. So again, to add this two layer or three layers rather. So first, I'm going to click on the first layer that I want to add, and then to add more, I'm going to press Shift on my keyboard and then click, and then Shift and click, and notice that all of the three layers are highlighted. That means that these three layers are already selected. And then to add it to the background group, I'm just going to click and drag this there. Kana. Dapat maingon na siya. The layer or the background, sorry, the group rather, na siya blue nga, ma-surrounded siya with blue lines. That means we are ready to add the layers to the group. So, kana. So again, right now, there are no outlines, but if we're going to move it closer, so kana siya, meaning we're just going to, if this would be the line that will display, that means we only change perhaps the position of the layer, but we haven't really added to the group. If we wanted to add it to the group, all we need to do is to, kana, dapat na siya outline for the entire group. Kana. Okay, and then you will know that it's already included in the group. Pag move siya a little bit to the right, or if we're going to click this particular kaninga arrow down button, we click that, kana mawala siya, and then if we're going to click it again, will display siya. All right, so that means these three layers are already included in this background. Now you can, once it's already grouped, you can either turn it off. If we're going to turn off the visibility of of these three layers, I'm just going to click that, and then all of the layers will be hidden. Okay. All right, and then you can also add. Right, you can also add layer style to the entire three layers by adding style to the background itself. So let's say for example, um, kana, and then let's add blending option, and then if we're going to add, let's say stroke. Oh no no, let's just ko na lang color overlay na lang para klaro. All right, kana. Okay. So basically, you don't have to worry about adding it individually. You can just add the layer style to the group, and it will affect to the entire layers inside it. Okay. Next is we have create new layer. Basically, that will allow us to add layers to our project. So for example, let's open up new one. Okay, here to add new layer, we're just going to click this, and then a new layer will be added. And in some cases, if we're going to click this, there will be option to, okay, for some reason it's not adding or it's not giving us the option to change name right away. You can either click this to add new layer, or you can select the layer at the options bar, and then new, and then layer, and then this option will display. And then you can either enter the layer name, for example, example layer, press OK, and then the layer will display here. Or you can also do it by clicking the following keys on your keyboard: Control Shift N. Again, Control Shift N, and then the layer option will be displayed. So again, you can either select this, you can either select layer and then new, then layer, or Control Shift N. That's how you're going to add new layer to your design. And then delete layer allows you to remove the selected layer. Okay. All right. So for example, if we decided to delete this, let's go back to our main design. So for example, if we decided to delete this particular layer, so just click this, and it will delete. And then you'll be asked to confirm, delete layer one, and then press yes to delete the layer. All right. Control Z to reset or to undo. All right. So that is basically that concludes the parts of the layers. Next is we're going to understand more how does layers work. So when working on a project that involves a lot of objects or elements, it's always best to separate each object in the layer as much as possible. This provides easier manipulation on each object, thus making a photo editing much easier. Just like what I did with this particular design. As much as possible, all the visual elements are on separate layers. That way, it would be much easier for me to modify them. So for example, kani, lahi siya nga layer. Kaning palm, lahi siya nga layer. Then kini, lahi pa siya nga layer. And that way, it gives me an easier access to modification of these layers. Okay, next, layer arrangement. To set which layer should be displayed in the front or back, proper arrangement of layers must be observed. Layers in the palette are displayed vertically, and the layers that are located at the top are also located in the front of the picture, and the layers that are located at the bottom are also located at the back of the picture. So to rearrange, simply drag the selected layer over or below to the other layer. So let's take a look at this example. This is a very clear example basically on understanding how the layer arrangement or understanding layer arrangement basically. So basically how giyon sa nato pagbutang ang layer sa atong palette will affect on how it also displays sa ato ang screen. Now, for example, let's take a look at this example that we have here. So, kanina ang sa left side would be the layer palette, and then the right side is the artboard. So there are three layers. We have like yellow, blue, and red, and then here it is. Okay, so basically, if kinsa to nasa ibabaw, will display at the front. So let's take a look. Yellow layer is located at the top of the palette. So therefore, the yellow palette is also displayed at the front. And then the red is nasa sa likod, nasa sa boss, therefore it's also located at the back. And then the blue, since it's the middle, so basically the same thing happens here. The blue is also located at the middle between the yellow and the red. Okay, so that is the general rule on how basically layers arrangement work. So the rule is that if the layer is located on top of another layer, then that layer is gonna be in front of that layer as well in the artboard. Okay, so going back to our Adobe Photoshop here, so basically, for example, this is here. Kanang klaro. Okay, so right now, layer 1 is located on top of this gradient fill layer. Therefore, the layer 1 should be appear in front of the gradient layer. What happens if I'm going to move this, and now the gradient fill is now located on top of the layer 1, then the gradient fill is already in front of the layer 1 as well. Okay, All right. So to change the arrangement of the layers, all you need to do is click and drag the layer that you wanted to change position or order rather on top or below the other layers. Okay. So for example, sa paman, palm kani daw. All right. So kani. For example, if I'm going to move this particular kani kani nga particular layer, if I'm going to move it okay in this area, then it will appear on top of the other layers. Okay. All right. So that is layer arrangement. So duplicate layers. You can easily create two or more similar objects without doing it individually by duplicating it. To do so, simply right-click on the layer you want to duplicate and then click Duplicate Layer. Type the new layer name, click OK, or simply type Ctrl J. Alright, so in Adobe Photoshop, you'll be able to duplicate objects without really having to do it again. Okay, what does it mean? So for example, um, actually in this particular design, there are a lot of layers that I've duplicated. So for example, this entire thing is a duplication of this, diba? They're similar. Once I've already duplicated it, I just flipped it, flipped it. Okay, so in that way, I don't have to worry about creating the same thing all over again. So for example, let's try to duplicate this again. You can right click and then duplicate layer, this one, or simply type on your keyboard Control J. Okay, Control J, and then you will see that two there are now two layers, and the other one will display layer one copy. Now let's check if duwa na bijud atong layer. Let's try to move the other one here. Duwa na kabog ato ang layer. Okay, so let's Control Z, and then let me just delete this. So that is duplicating of layer. Next, hide or unhide. Again, if you decided to hide a layer, all you need to do is select the eye icon. So if it's the eye icon is visible, then the layer is visible. If it's not displayed, then it is invisible. Then layer styles. You can add styles to the object inside the layer. To do so, right click on the layer and select blending options. Alright, so again, the blending options. This is what we did a while ago. So the layer styles include the following: bevel and emboss. Apply bevel and emboss effect. The light and shadow gives the object a 3D effect. Okay, so let's say for example, let's create a very simple object, and then let's fill it with, let's say, red. Oh, okay, let's fill it with red. Okay, now to blending option, the first let's try the bevel and emboss. Okay, hold on. Okay, again, blending option, and then let's add bevel and emboss. So to add bevel emboss, select that, make sure it's clicked, and then you can change the, let's say, the style. It could be either inner bevel or outer bevel. So basically, when you say bevel, that will give us kind of an effect that the picture or the layer will look like it's um, will basically give 3D effect basically. Okay, so you can change the properties. So we have depth, size, soften, soften rather. Okay, and then you can change the opacity, or you can change the blending mode. Let's change it back to normal, and then all right. So it would be totally up to you. If you're already using Adobe Photoshop, then it would be totally up to you to explore the different properties. Okay, I don't have to explain all of this. You can just explore it on your own. Okay, so basically you can change the size of the bevel. You can soften the bevel or you can harden the bevel. You can change the ano man, pattern. So we have gloss contour, we have flat, we have saan na siya? Cone or inverted, and okay, so that is bevel and emboss. We're going to unselect that, and then we have stroke. Stroke will allow us to add, let's say, a kuan, an outline to our object. Ano na ani? Hold on. Okay. All right. Again, stroke. The stroke will allow us to add outline. For some reason, I think it's just a problem on my computer. Ano na ay mo display nga itom sa gawas? Stroke. Okay. All right. Let's try again. Let's try again. Let's close this. Let's create a new one. Let's paint it with color red. And then let's add blending option or a layer style to it. So again, stroke will allow us to give an outline to the edge of the layer. So select it again, just click on the stroke until it's highlighted to add or to change its properties. So you can either change the size, you can change either, you can select either the stroke will be outside or inside or center. Okay, and then you can select the blending mode, same thing, katong na ay normal, na ay multiply, and so on and so forth. You can select the opacity, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then we have inner shadow. So inner shadow will allow us to add, well, shadow inside the object. So just click it to add properties to it. So you can set the opacity, you can set the blending mode, you can set the distance, you can set the, I'm not sure what choke means, but this is what happens. Kana? And then you can select the size, and then you can select the contour. All right. And then we have inner glow. Inner glow will allow us to add shiny colors. Right. Basically, it will give us the illusion that the picture is glowing inside. So you can select the color here, and then satin. Okay, I'm not really sure what that means, but this is what happens. Now, then color overlay. Basically, it will allow you to change the color of the entire layer. So right now it's changed to gray. Like we can also change that to any other color. Let's say blue. Okay. You can also change it to any, just about any color that you want. That is color overlay. So whatever it is, everything inside the layer will be replaced with a solid color. And the gradient overlay is going to be the same. However, this time you will be given an option to, instead of a solid color, a gradient or combination of multiple colors, just like this. And then you can change the direction, na? Or you can change the style, radial, angular, reflected, diamond. Okay. And then pattern overlay, it will change instead of color, it will change the entire, let's say, color of the layers with a pattern. So to select patterns here, so these are the examples of the pattern default. You can add more by selecting this and then load patterns. Okay, and then you can add patterns that you've downloaded over the internet. And then outer glow will allow us to add glowing colors to our design. This time it's outside. So for example, let's change it to yellow para makita. Okay, and then drop shadow, it will give us an option to add shadow basically to our design. So you can also change the size and the spread, and then you can change the direction. Okay, so that is the layer styles for using blending modes. Okay, so let's have an activity. Let's try to use blending mode, and then let's try to make an actual composition out of it. And this would be this particular composition. Okay, so these are the styles used. We have bevel emboss, texture, drop shadow, and then color overlay. Sa pamilain. All right, so here's how we do it. Basically, we're going to create a composition that looks something like this. So it's supposed to look like a chocolate. A very, very simple composition indeed. First step, create new project set to 600px with 600px height, 72 pixel per inch. So let's close this. Again, file, new, and then so dapat 600px with 600px height. Let's change it to pixels and let's change this to 600 and then 600 and 72 ppi, and then color mode is RGB. Great. All right. And then the second is create a new layer, Control Shift N, name it Chocobar. Okay, Control Shift N, and then let's just name it Choco. All right. Sige, Chocobar na lang. Okay. And then use rectangular marquee. Draw a square with about 2 inches by clicking and dragging across the screen while holding the shift button on your keyboard. Okay, so we'll use the marquee key. Kani. All right, this is the marquee tool. And then to maintain the size, to maintain the squareness of the object, well, we have to press shift and then click and drag. Okay, so regardless of asan ako siya i-drag around, the marquee tool will stay square. However, if I'm going to release the shift, I can change the size. Basically, it will set the different it will set different sizes for both the length and the width. However, if I'm going to select shift, then it will maintain the same size all around. So again, it says here it should be around 2 inch. So kana. All right. So notice that it says width is 2.000 inch and then height is 2.00 inch. Okay. Okay. And then next step is to open your swatches palette and fill or G with the rectangle section with darker warm brown color or this one. So let's open up our swatch, this one, and then select the darker warm brown. Let's look for the darker warm brown. If na ba? Dark red, darker warm brown. darker warm brown. We can either use that, or another option is to click this color picker and then type in this 603 603913. Okay, that nada 603913. Select OK, and then next is fill the rectangular selection with darker warm color. So we'll use this, but instead of gradient, we'll use the paint bucket tool and then click. All right, press Ctrl D to deselect. So right now it's still being selected. How do we know that it's still selected? Because naapay mga moving lines, broken lines. So Ctrl D to deselect. Let me decrease this real quick. All right. Next, step 4. Duplicate the layer. Ctrl J. Using the move tool, move the second layer to the right side of the first layer. Repeat this step to duplicate 5 times more to form 6 bars. Arrange it 3 columns and 2 rows. Okay, so using selecting this the layer, we're going to duplicate it. Again, duplicate would be right click, duplicate, or simply on your keyboard, Control J. All right, it's now duplicated. All we need to do is move it like so. Kana. All right, and then let's continue the same process until we'll be able to duplicate choco bars six row sorry 3 rows, and then sorry 2 rows and then 3 columns. So let's do the same thing. Control J to duplicate, and then move, and then let's duplicate this at once. Move here, and then let's try to center it all. Select all the layers by clicking Shift, and then that's yeah, butang nato diha. Okay, next, using a horizontal type tool or T, type the letter C in capital letter using Cooper Black font, 72 size, and color white. Move it at the center of the layer. Okay, so using T daw, gani, let's type it right here. Let's type letter C. For now, let's try to change the color to white na lang sa. And then it says there that we wanted to use the Cooper Black. The Cooper Black is one of the a default font in Adobe. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, in Windows, so it should be available to any computer that you have. So we have here Cooper Black. Where it is? There, Cooper Black. Okay, and then let's move it at the center now. Kana. Let's try to increase the size to 72, and it should be capital letter. Kana. And then next, duplicate the text layer and edit it by selecting the type tool again and then click on the text. Change it to H. Repeat the steps to display Choco. Alright, so we're going to duplicate this, Control J, and then move. And then we're going to edit it. We're going to select T again and then type, backspace, and then let's change it to H. Alright, again, we're going to duplicate this and then going to do the same process for the entire kane. And then let's change it to O. Hold on. Let's change it to O. And then duplicate it again. And then duplicate it again. This time we'll change this to letter C. And then lastly, we're going to duplicate this, move it right here, and then change it to exclamation point. All right, so we have now our base chocolate composition. Now we're going to use the blending tool to add to make it more likely a chocolate. To do so, let's proceed to the next steps. Adding layer style. To instantly apply the same layer style to all the similar layers, Group all the choco bar together. To do so, click on the Create New Group button at the bottom of the Layers palette. Double-click on the group name, enter choco bars, then click Enter. Make sure to drag and move all the choco bars layers inside it. Do the same steps with all the text layers and name the group choco text. Okay, so let's proceed. Let's group this. So all the text layers, kani, let's duplicate this by you can either select all of it at once and then select this. Click the kind group. It will automatically group itself. Or katong atong gibuhat kay na. I'm sorry. Kana click the group icon. Let's rename this to Choco text, and then select all of these layers, the text layers rather, and then move it to the group. So again, mabala na tong nana siya sa group if the group itself is nana siya outline nga blue all around it. Okay? And then let's do the same thing for the bars. Okay? And then select and then move. All right. So what it does is we'll be able to apply, since basically all of these are just similar, so we can apply the layer styles for all the layers, all the similar layers rather. So we can just hide this to save space. And then let's start with the choco bars. Okay, so what are so ito mga layer style that we're supposed to add. So here for the choco bars, here bevel and emboss, the style must be inner bevel, the depth is 388 pixels or percent. All right, so let's try atong paggamyan para makita. Okay, all right, so let's start with the choco bars. So kanay right click and then blending options. Okay, ana lang. First is, let's find a way nga magamay ni siya be. Unfortunately wala. Okay, first is we're going to add bevel and emboss, this one. Okay, and then it should be inner bevel, the style. The depth should be 388%, and then the size should be 13 px. And then soften must be 0. Okay, let's add a little bit of softness to it though. About 2%. Angle is 54 degrees rather. So 54, I'm sorry, that's 45, that's 54. Okay, and then gloss contour, it should be ring. Asa ang ring ani? Linear, cone, inverted. Dara, ring, ani? Ring. Okay? Okay na. And then highlight, shadow, opacity is both 50%. So let's change it to 50. And then we have here 50 as well. Okay, and then we have texture. So it says here that the pattern wax crayon on charcoal paper. So what? Pangitaon na to na. All right, let's just. All right, we'll just skip this for the meantime. Ano lang. And then we have drop shadow, and then the drop shadow should be the color used is black. Opacity is 58, and then the angle is 54 degrees. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Drop shadow, and then distance is 9 px. So we have your distance. Let's set it to 9. Spread is 0, and then the size is 9. Okay. All right. Kana. And then let's see into sunod. Okay. All right. That's it. And then for the text, so we will have bevel and emboss upward. Let's go to the text blending option, and then style should be, sorry, the style should be pillow emboss. Kana. Technique is smooth. Okay. Depth is 62%, and then direction is up. Okay. And then size is 10. Soften is 3, and then angle is 54. Highlight 65 and 75. 65, 75. Okay. And then color overlay, let's change that to this 4D3620. Press OK. Kana. And then 100% opacity. Okay, so it doesn't really look like the same with what we did a while ago for some reason. I guess there are some errors with my computers, but basically that's it. This is how like blending option works for Adobe Photoshop. All right, so that will be all for today. The next lesson will be about adjustment layers that will allow us to add for an in-depth styles to our layers, and we'll talk more about it in our next lesson. So thanks so much for making this far, and consider this class as a tutorial. If you have computer at home, you can start working, or you can start um, trying to explore the blending option. We unfortunately we cannot discuss all the layer styles. We can just discuss some of the layer styles that we are ought to use most of the time when doing graphic design. Anyway, if you have any questions or clarifications, feel free to comment down, or you can send your questions through our respective Facebook chat groups. Stand by for the assessment link as well as the assignment that will be posted to our Google Classroom. All right, so thank you so much for again keeping making this far. Please keep yourself safe. God bless us all, guys. Goodbye.